Buenos Aires was the best decision I could have done ever, but it was very overwhelming trying to figure out which neighborhood I wanted to live in. So today I'm going to share with you my top 5 recommendations for where you can live or travel to in Buenos Aires. I'm gonna go ahead and start with my favorite neighborhood. I love this one so much. Some people may disagree, but my favorite neighborhood and my top recommendation to live in is, of course, Recoleta. I love Recoleta because it really has such a nice aesthetic vibe to it. Like, people really do compare Recoleta with like a European architecture, like you're walking down Paris, like the Paris of Argentina. And I 100% agree. Like, when you are walking in Recoleta, you one, feel safe. It is kind of busy, but it's of course not as busy compared to some of the other areas, which I'm going to talk about later in the video. And I really love that there's a cafe at every single street corner you're at. It's so convenient to stores. It is just so convenient to so many things, especially if you have pets. There are so many parks and green areas in which you can walk your dog and hang out and make a picnic, or there's so many museums. Like, I can go on and on about how much I love Recoleta. But the one thing I don't like about Recoleta is the price, and there are really two prices for housing in Argentina. There is the foreigner price, so that's like me. You're coming to Argentina and they know you're from another country and you either are paying with the US dollar or you're paying with the euro, and they charge you an upscale amount of rent for a place that's probably worth half the price for people who live in Argentina. And then that leads me to the second option, which is if you live in Argentina and you're Argentinian, or even if you speak really good Spanish, you may be able to like fly under the radar here. And there is like the price for people who are not paying specifically in US dollars. It's like the price specifically for people living in Argentina. And I hope I explained that well. Really, it's like they're smart. They're gonna try to get the biggest bang for their buck. And if they can get more money from the foreigners who have it, you know what? I'm not hating. You know what? Let a person make their money, let a person make their rent. And still, to me, I'm paying like $500 a month USD. And that, of course, is high for some places down there. But for me, that's really cheap and I'm saving money, just to kind of put it into perspective a little bit. Let's go ahead and talk about the area probably most people have read when trying to determine where they want to move to Argentina, or in which hotel they want to stay, or looking at the Airbnbs. You've probably already heard about this, and this is Palermo. And I'm gonna go ahead and just state that, like, I truthfully don't really see a difference between Palermo Soho versus Palermo Hollywood. A lot of people will tell you they are completely different, but for me, they're kind of the same. The only difference for me is that Palermo Hollywood really has more of like a nightlife feel, and if you enjoy going to bars and if you enjoy nightlife, if you enjoy partying and you want to be close and central to that type of stuff, Palermo Hollywood is for you. However, if you like more of a relaxed vibe, not as noisy, and if you're not really into the nightlife but still want to be in the Palermo district, I would recommend Palermo Soho. But other than that, they are literally right next to each other, so to me they're just all Palermo. So really don't get too confused as to where you want to live versus Hollywood or Soho. Just know that if you like the nightlife, go to Hollywood, and if you don't like the nightlife, just go to Soho. But other than that, I love Palermo. I love it so much. It is my number 2 on this list because it's not as, I don't want to say like aesthetic as Recoleta, because I love Recoleta, but it's definitely much more trendy. The street art is there, like the vibes from the cafes and like the people who are walking down there are very trendy and hipster. They give off a really nice bohemian style. Like, if you are into that type of vibe, I would definitely recommend Palermo, Hollywood, or Soho over Recoleta. And just remember, like, this is just my own personal opinion, but some people will tell you other things, but really for me, if we're getting down to like the nitty-gritty, they're kind of the same, and the only difference is the nightlife, of course, but really they are filled with such beautiful cafes, such beautiful scenery. There's so much to do in Palermo and in Recoleta as well. The subways are very convenient, but once again, because it is such a big touristy district, the prices for hotels and Airbnbs are really high compared to some of the other areas I'm going to get into later in this video. And I'd say that one thing I prefer more about Recoleta versus Palermo is that if you're going to Argentina specifically to improve your Spanish and you want to get involved within that community, I would really strongly recommend that maybe you go looking for a different area compared to Palermo because it's so incredibly filled with expats and people who speak English, like foreigners and stuff like that. And that's not to say that you will not find anyone who speaks Spanish. Like, they definitely do speak Spanish as well. It's not like you're gonna run into like an American every other street corner you go to. But in my own personal experience, I found that when I'm trying to like meet new people or go to a cafe or something, people are already speaking in English compared to speaking in Spanish. So if your goal and your intention is to go down there and really be exposed, like if you go to the supermarket and you want to just speak in Spanish, I'd say either be really mindful with making it intentional that you're going to go down there, you're going to speak Spanish regardless if they respond to you in English or not, or I would recommend that you look again for a different district where you're really immersed in that culture. And again, I don't want to come off saying that Palermo is like an Americanized culture. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say it's that I feel that I continually like talk in English more in Palermo than I do in any other area in Buenos Aires, so just keep that in mind too. Now we're going to talk about the Microcentro, and this really is the hub of Buenos Aires. This is where like the hustle and bustle happens. This is where you see Obelisco, that giant tower. This is where you see like Avenida Corrientes, which is the largest avenue in the world. Like, this is where all the movement is happening. It's hustles and bustles all night long. If there's a football, soccer match and they win, they're going right to this area. So if you like loud, noisy, convenient, this area is for you. But also, again, this is really just a general like advice and recommendation for you to know that there are cafes and street corners and empanada shops. Like, you will always be close to a food shop. This is everywhere, but more specifically, it's very present in the Microcentro, and it's great if you like this area and you want to go to like all the areas too, because the transportation is so well put together there. You can take a bus, you can take a subway, you will always find yourself being able to even catch a taxi too, and you probably wouldn't even have a long wait time either. Like, if you love being in the center for where all the hustle and bustle happens, go to the Microcentro. However, my one downfall for this is that it's just always crowded. There are always so many people because it's a very touristy destination. People are always taking photos and it's very noisy, especially with all the cars and things like that. So if you prefer quiet, and also if you prefer like more scenery, and if you prefer walking in parks and classes and things like that, I don't believe that the Microcentro really has as much to offer compared to Recoleta, for example. And I will always go back to Recoleta because I love Recoleta so much. This next one I'm going to talk about is really interesting talking about it because when I first decided to move to Buenos Aires, I did not even consider this like at all. And although it's so incredibly famous and popular, like, I felt like so many sites and vlogs online just did not talk about this as like an option to live, more of just like an option to like walk around. But this is Puerto Madero, and this is where like you find the ports and the waterfront and the eco reserve. It's very modern. It has like a fancy vibe, and I am not a fancy person at all. I love laid back. I love being able to hang out in sweats like this. But if you are a type of person who love elegance and fancy and fashionable, I would 100% recommend that you move to Puerto Madero. The downfall is that out of all the districts I just talked about, Puerto Madero is the most expensive one to live in, but a positive to that is that it is the most modern accommodations that you can find in Buenos Aires, from Airbnbs to hotels. Like, you are definitely getting modern, but you're paying the modern price. Also, you really do have nice access to scenery all the time. You have the eco reserve, as I just mentioned, you have the waterfront, you have fresh, clean air always circulating around you. But because it's kind of surrounded by water and greenery, it's a little bit less convenient to get to the center of Buenos Aires or like back into the capital, even though it is in the capital, but it just kind of feels like off to the side. And from my experience, like when I'm walking around Puerto Madero, I always feel like I have to walk super extra to find the subway line or to find a bus, and I always feel like I'm getting messed up using Google Maps. And that's coming from a person who literally is the worst person in the world using Google Maps, so it's probably just a me problem, but I always find myself very confused and flustered when I'm leaving Puerto Madero, going back to like Recoleta or wherever I want to go next. But it really is an upscaled, modern version, and if you really like that aspect and vibe, I would 100% recommend that you go to Puerto Madero. And outside of the price and it not being super convenient, I really don't have anything bad to say about it. I actually really love Puerto Madero. Just for me personally, I couldn't see myself living in it because I like being a little bit more centered to some of the other options that I just mentioned. And I have one last one that I'm going to share with you guys today. This is Belgrano. And I'm going to be completely honest, I did not know about Belgrano like at all. To me, it is like just as far away from the center as Puerto Madero is. But I went to a language excursion thing one day and this girl was like, oh my gosh, like you should definitely go to Belgrano. And I'm like, okay, I'll put it on my like to-do list to do, I suppose. And I went there and I was like, wow. Another secret that is not a secret at all, but sometimes you just get so much into the routine and you get so much into a list of things that you want to do personally. And I just went there for the first time recently and I was really blown away by just the amount of people that were there, how many shops were there. I honestly felt that Belgrano had shops that offered like things like a Five Below or like a Dollar Tree would have, and I'm so happy that I found out about this because shopping for home decor or just like little small knickknacks, like this is the area to do some like random shopping in if you're actually moving to Buenos Aires and you want like a bin or you want multiple bins or you want some hair clips or you don't even know what you want and you just want to go browsing and window shopping. Go to Belgrano to visit and shop if you don't decide to live there. My one con is that it is very inconvenient to get to and very inconvenient to come back. My soup day ride was about 20 minutes getting there, and to me, I like being super close and like a 5-minute soup day subway ride, so for me it was just a little bit far off. But if you really enjoy like a little bit less of a crowded feel and you enjoy quiet a little bit more, I would recommend Belgrano. And another great thing about it is that there are so many shops, but they're not just like these small shops like I just mentioned. There are also these larger shops like Adidas and Nike and Puma. So if you're really looking to buy some stuff, you could buy some stuff in that area, in that district as well. Again, there are cafes and restaurants and so much to eat and so much to try and so much to do in all of these districts I just mentioned. And truthfully, I wouldn't really say that one has more than another or one offers so much more than the other, because to me, they're kind of all equal in that sense. Just my one big recommendation, some people will tell you that this district or this area is more safe than this area, but I always recommend on this channel and the people that I talk to that you have to be mindful of your possessions no matter where you go. Like, you do not want to be holding your phone out on the selfie stick, not being mindful of your possessions, because you can get pickpocketed in Buenos Aires as easily as you can get pickpocketed in New York City or LA or Florida, for example. Like, just because you're in Buenos Aires, let's say in Recoleta, that doesn't mean you can't get pickpocketed compared to if you go to La Boca. You know what I mean? So just be mindful and you will have so much fun. Now, there are so many other districts and areas in which you can live and travel to in Buenos Aires, and if you would like to see more of that, leave me a comment down below. I would love to make another video. I really hope that this helped you. I wish you the best of luck in your travel journeys, and if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, I would love it if you could leave a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for future content.